Hello, friends. Let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Behavioral Health Matters, a Black History Month celebration. Today and every day that we can be together is a true gift. So thank you for sharing your time with us. My name is Taylor Bryan Turner. I am the Assistant Regional Administrator at the Office of Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, otherwise known as SAMHSA, at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in New England. We are elated that you could be with us for the next hour as we unveil our first Diversity Inclusion Project Showcase, an initiative that uplifts talented Black, Indigenous, and people of color right here in our communities, dedicated to substance use disorders and mental health, peer recovery, justice transformation, LGBTQIA+, equality, therapeutic services through arts and agriculture, spirituality, and more. This work is imperative. And without this commitment, we could really be in harm's way. So this is a celebration for what you all bring to help us endure the stressors pre and post-pandemic. Through this series, our goal is to highlight community members, inspire each other, and expand your knowledge of the work being done right here in New England around behavioral health and diversity. Over the next 2 days, you will hear from leaders about why they are excited about this project, learn from experts on the importance of investing in mental health, explore BIPOC community-based organizations who are committed to behavioral health and equality, and lastly, experience the impact that intentional partnerships can have on communities of color. And speaking of partnerships, I'd like to thank our fantastic colleagues at the New England Mental Health Technology Transfer Center for their support in hosting this series. Special thanks to Maria Restrepo-Toro and the incredible Ingrid Paget. And of course, the other half of SAMHSA, Tim Jean. We encourage you to join us in the chat box to welcome, applaud, and provide words of affirmation. You may also share your interest in connecting. That's what this is all about. And I'm not thrilled that we cannot be together for this inaugural event, but please type as you can to salute the achievements you will learn about today and tomorrow. As we proceed, we invite you to think about how we might redress the ways we interact with and nurture community. Can we grow and build together for a viable and equitable future in mental health? And if so, how do we progress? In the interest of time and for our showcase presenters, let's jump right into today's agenda by welcoming a very special guest. This New England native truly needs no introduction. He returned to the SAMHSA team in 2019. Previously, he has served as Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor to the SAMHSA Administrator for the Obama-Biden administration and led the charge to produce Facing Addiction in America, the Surgeon General's report on alcohol, drugs, and health. He's been the Senior Advisor to former Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo, who is now the nation's Commerce Secretary. And just last month, his talent, passion, and infectious leadership has attracted the attention of the Biden-Harris administration and has had the honor of serving as the nation's acting Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Use. Do you see a trend here? Everything he touches turns to gold, and that includes in Region 1. He is the official Regional Administrator for SAMHSA in New England. Please help me welcome home Tom Cordair.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for that amazing introduction, and for bringing us all together in this innovative forum, and inviting me to join all of our colleagues around New England for the first Behavioral Health Matters Black Month event. You see what BH, very creative. That's Taylor. It's great to be back in one with each of you. This is also a courageous, it's an opportunity to recognize the hard work of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, nonprofit and community-based organizations, owned and operated, employing or serving, no matter the capacity, that are all dedicated to mental and substance use disorders. This is a particularly good time to highlight this work, which has been going on for many years. We want to elevate it and bring it to the attention of funding entities to provide a space to create opportunities, celebrate, and thank you. Over the next 2 days, you're going to hear from thought leaders like social workers, farmers, artists, and others who have created intentional ways to enrich people's lives. As we celebrate those accomplishments, we must take an honest look at how to improve the quality of life for our communities and individuals across this nation. This diversity inclusion project showcase model affords us an opportunity to learn how we here at SAMHSA can better advance the behavioral health of America while striving to reduce the impact of substance use and mental illness across America's Black communities. Why is this forum important? Well, we heard firsthand from the regional Black, Indigenous, and people of color organizations that there's a need to improve collaboration, partnership, and technical assistance, and to help expand their visibility. And you know what? They're right. And while I listened and struggled to conceive a way forward, Taylor and all of her creative glory really deserves the credit for this brainchild. Thank you, Taylor. We also brought this idea to behavioral health leadership in the region. They not only encouraged us, but supported the efforts by providing important feedback we used to clarify our focus. Thank you to the mental health commissioners and single state agency directors. We really appreciate your help. And racial health disparities is a national priority for the Biden administration and for SAMHSA, but it's not a new one. In 2010, SAMHSA established the Office of Behavioral Equity by the way of the Affordable Care Act, with 5 other offices of minority health. I'm excited for you to hear from Mary Rory, our Director of Behavioral Health Equity, over the next 2 days, and to learn more about SAMHSA's programs dedicated to practice improvement, communication, technical assistance, and how the Diversity Inclusion Project Showcase can work in tandem with OBHE's national network, what is the NED. Most importantly, I'm excited for you to explore to create more equitable opportunities. Additionally, the New England Mental Health Technology Transfer Center has formed REACH, a learning collaborative and database to help support CBOs and nonprofits to ensure success. You'll hear more about this initiative and how to join these networks. Hopefully, you can see how synergized we all are and how passionate we remain to uplift our Black, Indigenous, and people of color partners. We support workforce development efforts as well and encourage our friends in philanthropy and academia to join us in this innovation. We strongly encourage the DIPS model by all. This is really a no-brainer. A safe space for collaboration, and we in any way possible. It's important that during Black History Month, by acknowledging the many contributions made by to this country, there is an urgent need for us to work diligently toward ensuring quality behavioral health services are provided equitably across the nation. The COVID-19 pandemic and recent and reported racial injustices have shown a spotlight on these inequities that Black, Indigenous, people of color populations face in our country today. These intolerable disparities demand our attention and action. In honor of what would have been John Lewis's 81st birthday last weekend, I think doing this work is our way to get into some good trouble, some necessary trouble, as the Congressman would say. We are uniquely positioned to make a tangible difference in the lives of BIPOC and other underserved communities. We must continually renew our commitment to examine how we at SAMHSA may implement effective solutions as a nation and an agency, and you as the region, to ensure the provision of equitable behavioral health services for all Black Americans. Thanks again for joining us today for a celebration of community-based organizations and their successes. I would like to now introduce our Region 1 colleague, Dr. Mary Rittman of the Connecticut Department of Health and Addiction, known as DEMIS, who will kick off this 2-day session. Really impressed by Miriam and her work for a while now. She was, after all, a SAMHSA staff alumni, serving as an appointee at the agency during the Obama administration. She sent, but one of the things that most impressed me about her was last year, after George Floyd's killing, she sent an open letter to staff at Demas on racial injustice and equality. It was a starting point for people to share what they were feeling. And also, as a system of care, the message is keeping centered and embody some key principles as people approach their work, helping to advance equity and justice and urging people to have these conversations. Thanks for your leadership, Miriam. And I give you Miriam Delphin-Rittman, the commissioner.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Tom. I so appreciate your kind words. And I feel extremely honored to be asked to welcome everyone to the kickoff of this highly innovative, is my video working? Can't tell anyway, okay. To this highly innovative initiative to bring greater equity and inclusion and funding to community-based behavioral health services in New England and beyond. But I do have to say, I've had the opportunity to meet many of our presenters for both days, and I am inspired by their dedication, their passion, and their commitment to the health and wellness of the individuals they serve. What a remarkable way to celebrate Black History Month. Taking these concrete steps towards increasing access of historically marginalized groups to grants and other sources of financial support for the important work they do every day is no doubt a timely and much needed initiative. I've spent much of my career addressing racial and ethnic health disparities in behavioral health access and outcomes. And I can say I am excited about the possibilities that the DIPS initiative holds for increasing funding to better meet the behavioral health needs of diverse communities. And so I commend Assistant Secretary Cordwayer and Assistant Regional Administrator Brian Turner for their vision and commitment to social justice and economic justice in bringing forward this DIPS initiative. We have important work ahead of us to sustain the momentum we are creating this month. We know that we have to support diverse providers as they engage in securing funding to provide services that they are uniquely qualified to offer. We need to encourage and empower providers as they encourage and empower the individuals they serve to pursue recovery and reclaim their rights to citizenship and broader community inclusion. In the brief time that I have, I'd like to suggest a couple of strategies that can facilitate this important work. First, it's important for all of us to recognize that tightly controlled experimental research provides only one type of evidence, and that community-defined and practice-based evidence are equally valid and important indications of what helps people in times of distress, of what services and supports people will choose to use in pursuing their own wellness and recovery. In order to promote social justice and equality in behavioral health funding and care, it's essential to listen closely to diverse community members and to what they find is most useful in addressing their needs. We need to understand that what works for people in one community, say Greenwich, Connecticut, for example, may not work for other people in Bridgeport, when the average household income of one of these cities is less than half the other, despite the fact that they're just 20 minutes apart. When funders ask providers to offer evidence-based practices, it's important to consider the relevance of this evidence for the people being served. Funders who broaden their understanding of evidence in this way and support community-driven innovation as a strategy for addressing disparities and promoting cultural responsiveness will be rewarded by reaping the fruits of these efforts, including helping to promote recovery among individuals who might not otherwise access services, or who might access services as a last resort. Second, one of the most important innovations to turn the tide and stem the increasing disparities that we've seen is for providers and policymakers, for that matter, to include people being served in designing, implementing, and evaluating services and supports being offered. A dear friend of mine who's in long-term recovery from both mental health and substance use conditions often said to me, if you want to know about a book, ask the author. If you want to know about what a population needs or what would lead people to engage in services, there's no better or more direct way to find out than by asking them. If funders accept that there are different types of evidence, then it's also important for diverse providers to be able to be determined in asking for, gathering, and using this kind of evidence that is generated out of people's accumulated lived experience of recovery. The individuals we serve are not just recipients or users. They are vital partners in a collective enterprise focused on healing, on the restoration of meaning and hope, and on the fulfilling valued and social roles, and make contributions to, as well as receiving help from their communities. Whether you're a state or local leader, a private philanthropist, a community provider, and everyone else on this call, I hope that you find today's program useful in getting the word out about valuable services and supports you offer, or about learning the ways in which making investments in BIPOC agencies benefit communities two- and threefold. I thank SAMHSA for convening us and for developing this vitally important DIPS initiative, which no doubt will contribute to increased equity in funding and services for diverse programs and providers in our region and beyond. So thank you. At this time, I'd like to turn our virtual floor back over to Assistant Regional Administrator Taylor Bryan Turner, who will introduce our Diversity Inclusion Project Showcase, the initiative which has brought us here today. Taylor?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miriam.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tom, for your support. And Miriam, you've been a support for me since I started, so I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I guess I should tell you why we are all here. It is my pleasure to do so. We can advance to the next slide. It is my pleasure to tell you why we are all here today. The short answer is because of you. When I began at SAMHSA almost a year ago, next month will be a year, I heard firsthand from our partners what they needed, some support, and asked us quite directly, because Region 1 is not shy. What are we doing about diversity and inclusion? What is SAMHSA doing to increase diversity among grantees? What is SAMHSA doing to increase visibility for all providers, right? Why do the same entities continue to get funding each year? And what is SAMHSA doing about behavioral health equity in the region? Some solutions we came up with, next slide, please. We can own it, right? Listen and learn. We can do better, right? And move forward. We can ask to see states' proposals, right? To make sure that there's a diverse body of work there, to make sure that they're stepping out to different entities, right? We can listen and we can convene. And this is how this all came about. The Office of Behavioral Health and Equity put out a document, Strategies for Outreaching and Engaging Communities of Color, a Pathway to Reducing Disparities. And it says, SAMHSA hears from state colleagues and other stakeholders that state administrators want to do good, so help them do it. And this is exactly what this is all about. Next slide, please. Our mission is to create a safe space to cultivate strong partnerships for equitable and healthier communities. The goal is to provide diverse nonprofit organizations an opportunity to present their business focus, population served, purpose, and community impact to regional behavioral health and substance use disorder leadership in your states. And the purpose, this effort is in direct response to local organizations who wish to gain access to SAMHSA block grants. SAMHSA, as you know, is exempt from advising states on how to allocate federal funds. However, as a convener, SAMHSA has the ability to assemble historically marginalized populations with visible and viable entities in an effort to cultivate those partnerships. Next slide, please. Who should come? State leadership, providers, and community-based organizations in underserved communities who wish to gain access to federal funds to address substance use and behavioral health needs. Other federal partners are welcome to join. Academia and philanthropic entities are welcome to attend and share complimentary grant announcements. The Diversity Inclusion Project Showcase is an in-person or virtual convening where community providers will showcase their business and community needs in about 10 minutes or less. Today we're doing it in 5, to state leadership and various partners to maximize funding potential. And there are many DIPS categories: youth, housing, PPW, workforce development, LGBTQIA+, reentry and justice, serious mental illness, veterans, older adults, faith groups. We hear from our faith leaders often. They are also frontline workers, right? They're on the ground. And when a community is hurting and in need, they are often the first folks we go to. We need to support them as much as we can. When should these showcases be held? This is our first one, so we're giving it a try. But it should really be scheduled based on your funding cycle, right? When it makes sense for your state. Grant cycles are unique to every state, so the dates can change interchangeably, and it shouldn't exceed 120 minutes. Next slide, please. We want to keep it moving as fast as possible. Where should they be held? Be creative and be thoughtful. Office, conference space, feds all have conference space. State departments have conference space. How about a local library, right? We work in tandem with our libraries all the time. Don't be afraid to ask them if you could use their space. Visit the community, go to the CBO, right? Go to one of their meetings. Or you could host it virtually like we are today. We're taking advantage of the vast reach that we have and inviting as many people as possible. And why, right? This is why we are all here. DIP's mission and goal is to create a space to cultivate strong partnerships for equitable and healthier communities. DIPS brings visibility to underserved community-based organizations to ensure viability. So let's take a walk and see. This is a sample agenda, and we're living it today. We're doing it right now, right? You have a guest speaker, you have a moderator, someone who really talks to the purpose and brings everyone in the room together, talk about why we're all here. And then we go into it, 5 minutes or 10 minutes per showcase presenter, per CBO, per nonprofit. We'll take a break. And obviously, if we were in person, we would be walking around, going to different booths, sharing and exchanging business cards. We can do that in the chat box. And then you would adjourn. The whole purpose, as the CBOs are presenting, states and providers and funders are listening and they say, hey, we have a program, right? We have somebody in our office that can work with you all year round. Why don't you work with Lisa or Michael or Maria and say, invite them to your programs throughout the year. That way, there's ongoing engagement. And when the grant cycles come out, you are familiar with the community, right? You're familiar with your partners that are working on the ground. Next slide, please. Do the best you can until you know better, right? Our great Maya Angelou said this to us. And then when you know better, you do better. So the whole idea is to build those connections. And then as new innovative programs become available, we can do better, right? We can build those partnerships. Next slide, please. After a year, states will report out on successful partnerships formed throughout the year. We want to increase diverse populations among community needs assessments. We want them to be colorful, you know. We want to implement data used from the pandemic to identify hotspots to secure funding. We have data right now that shows that Black, Brown, tribal communities are dying at much faster rates than our neighbors. We want to use that data to our advantage. Increase access to funding where businesses provide for underserved communities in the areas of behavioral health, prevention, treatment, and recovery. And we want to create that space again to build those strong partnerships to create equitable and healthier communities. A dream goal is to create a checkbox on the beloved grants.gov. I'm sure that's not your favorite site, but if there was a way that we could identify that your organization serves 50% or more of the population is of color or very low income, we want to know that right off the bat, right? We want to make sure that we're taking that into consideration. Next slide, please. SAMHSA does not do this work alone. The Office of Behavioral Health Equity put out an amazing charge to help complement, we put out a charge to complement OBHE's work, and they will do us the pleasure of speaking about their partnerships today. It is my honor to introduce the director of the Office of Behavioral Health Equity, Mary Rory, who will be our guest speaker, be our moderator over the next 2 days. It is my honor to have you join us. Mary, thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you all. I'm excited to be here. And the first thing I want to say is bravo. I want to thank you all for showcasing your talent here today, sharing it with us today. I'm going to flip the script. I think I'm supposed to share, how wonderful our office is. I'll just share the vision. And then I'd like for us to showcase, jump right into the showcase. So the Office of Behavioral Health Equity vision is to achieve behavioral health equity for minority, underserved, under-resourced communities across the country. This involves equitable access to high quality care, services, supports, and attention to social contextual issues that promote or prevent positive behavioral health outcome. Again, I applaud you all because you all have gotten it. It's bigger than us. It's about the people and the lives that we need to touch to make a difference by any means necessary. So, with that, I want to give the time back to Dips so that we can hear about these wonderful projects. I am sitting on pins and needles and I can't wait to hear and learn more. But I want you all to know that together we can get there together. And that's my favorite quote. So, with that, we'll go to the next slide and we'll get started. Now, I don't want you all to get upset with me. I'm a stickler for time. I want to make sure that we get to hear from each and every person. So I will do a quick introduction and then we'll go right into it. So, and I will time you. I do have my cell phone beside me with the stopwatch, and I will be putting in 5 minutes and I will cut you off. But I want you to know it'll be done in love. We'll need to transition. So our first speaker is Anne, who works for AFCAMP, Advocacy for Children. It serves a diverse group of parents, youth, and family that needs not only special education services, but are also trying to navigate the juvenile justice services, child welfare, and health systems, including children's behavioral health. Anne is a dynamic leader who focuses on the systems required for optimal child well-being. I had the pleasure to meet her. She is phenomenal. Anne, you're up. Thank you so much.
I want to start out with a question. What do a social work intern, a Office of Protection and Advocacy, and African Caribbean American parents have in common? Well, I can tell you that at the time, which was almost 20 years ago, no one knew that that combination would lead to the AFCAMP of today. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Tom Coder. Thank you, Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, with a big shout out to the Commissioner of Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services for the state of Connecticut. I want to tell you a little bit about AFCAMP, and I want you to take a look at our infographic. You'll see that it's behind me, and I'm hoping that everybody can see a little bit of what is there. And so, as Mary has said to you, she talked about these different areas, and you may say, well, boy, that sounds like a lot of disparate areas of work. I want to spend what's left of my 5 minutes trying to help you to understand why we believe that our work in empowering families and engaging systems to improve children's lives requires the collaboration and the integration across systems in all of these areas. You will note for us that equity is at the center of our work, and it's been at the center of our work ever since 20 years ago. And we focus our work in the areas of education, juvenile justice, and health. So a little bit of history, just a little. Our work started out in focusing on special education. And that is the work that the intern founder of AFCAMP, Ms. Merva Jackson, brought to the table. She worked at the Office of Protection and Advocacy, and she recognized through a needs assessment that the families who were of African, Caribbean American heritage in our community were not taking advantage of the protections of the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, which is a federal law that mandates a free and appropriate public education for all students, and so our students with disabilities. Quickly, we recognized that that work in the education field also reflected disparities in the outcomes in juvenile justice and also in health. And when I say health, I'm including the full continuum of care. So I'm including primary care, behavioral health care. So yes, it is relevant to what we have today with SAMHSA. And so our work is really designed on bringing to the table the voice of the people who these systems serve. And so I was really, really pleased to hear that that was something that was highlighted in some of the introductory comments. And so looking at our behavioral health system, there are some areas where I believe that organizations like AFCAMP can help us to get to a place where we would have improved outcomes for some of our populations whose outcomes are proven to be less positive, less robust than they are for other populations. When we are doing our work, we focus on doing it from multiple levels. So we start at the individual level because we want to make sure that we are enhancing individual and group capacity for individual and grassroots advocacy so that they can address the needs of their community, because there's a saying that says, he who lives it knows it. And so the community knows what their needs are. We did hear some suggestions a little earlier about what are some of the things that systems can do that can improve the outcomes. And so one of them really is to make sure that when we have, that when we do have opportunities to include the perspectives of the community, that we take advantage of that. It's something that AFCAMP does in terms of advocating with our individuals, with systems, and trying to make sure that we have greater integration. So I would be encouraging all of those out there who may have the opportunity to include community organizations and enhance engagement of family, parents, and those that you serve, to look to organizations like AFCAMP and my colleagues that you will hear from later today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And next slide, please, and we'll have Michelle Scott. Michelle, you're up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wikisak Natasuis Michelle Scott. Good afternoon. My name is Michelle. Currently, I'm speaking to you from the ancestral lands of the Lenape and Shinnecock people, and I am a member of the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation, which is in the borders of what's currently defined as Connecticut. I just want to say I'm really excited and proud that this region and Taylor and the team and everyone together, and Tom, have put this together. It is by no coincidence, we do not believe in those, that New England, it's representative of this region, and the tribes in this community and in this region are a tribe of firsts, right? And the connection between Black and Indigenous communities is very significant. So it's only right that we're listening and we're including Indigenous representation during Black History Month and for this first showcase. I identify as a Black woman racially outside of Indian country, and my citizenship though is Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Shinnecock, and Narragansett, and that's my language and my culture. And so I am the executive director of the Health Education Center, but I'm also the chairwoman of the Mashantucket Pequot Healthcare Advisory Board. And so highlighting kind of working with tribes and indigenous communities. In the past, we've had circles of care and systems of care and Native connections through SAMHSA. And really looking at those, we've been successful, right? And looking at how to make programs and behavioral health services culturally relevant and appropriate for not only those living on the reservation, but also off of the reservation. And there are many tribal people in programs. And so we've been successful year over year in the past 10 years to reduce suicide behaviors and thoughts by 36% with programs and the strategies that I wanted to just highlight. And we've also incorporated partners at every level, so including indigenous and tribal elders, as well as external providers. And it's very important to make sure that when you're thinking about programming and partnering, to make sure that you're addressing the behavioral needs of all indigenous families in your region, right? And that means everyone from the loose-haired, blonde-haired, hazel-eyed indigenous people to those with chocolate skin and coiled locks. And it's very significant, and definitely during the times we need to acknowledge that and name it, right? So for everyone out there, the strategies to think about. For our federal partners joining us today, when you see proposals come across your desk in the review process, claiming to include indigenous communities, right, for those extra grant reviewer points, make sure that they're meaningful and real, and challenge those that are proposing it, right? And if they're saying they're going to do tribal specific projects, ensuring that there's a tribal person as a principal investigator, or at least at the very minimum on the team. And then contracting with Native agencies that are doing the work across, and that they're in touch with issues that are going on in Indian country. We know there are a few agencies, the go-tos that consult on larger national grants, but agencies like Chief Strategy Group is an all-Native group that does the work for partners and behavioral health issues, and they refuse to subcontract with non-Natives when they have committed to doing Native projects. And that's important that they need to be upfront and say that, and it's an all-Native team. To our state leaders, clearly articulating and defining what that tribal consultation looks like, right? What does consultation and involvement mean, right? It looks like ongoing conversations, capacity building, and partnerships outside of the block grant funding cycles, and acknowledging that you're on Indigenous land every day, and attending the events and being involved with community, the 5 tribal nations that are in Connecticut. For the community-based organizations, recognizing that your clients, there are tribal people going in and out of your programs every single day, right? They might not look like what we're taught to see, but like I said, New England is a place of firsts. We were the first ports, first place of contact, and the first states with slavery, and to abolish that, right? And that legacy of the introduction is today in our programs. And then finally, to the foundations, you have the most flexibility to introduce initiatives that include and highlight Indigenous communities. So I want you to flex that power. And shake things up and be involved. We have a lot of folks that claim to be experts about Native Americans. We don't need any more of those. We have many Native American people that look like everyone else, that can do the work, and making sure that they are in positions of authority and on your boards to ensure that we're including everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And if you want more Michelle, she'll do a part 2 tomorrow. Maria, you're up. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maria Restrepo Toro, and I am the co-director of the New England Mental Health ETC, and it is our pleasure to be here this afternoon and to partner with DIPS and the regional administrations from Region 1. So I want to thank everybody for attending this important effort. We have been delighted to partner with DIPS because our mission of the New England Mental Health ETC in terms of equity and diversity really is very congruent with what we're doing here today. So let me start by saying that the New England Mental Health ETC is led by Dr. Larry Davidson at the Yale Program on Recovery and Community Health. And we are one of the 10 regional centers of the Mental Health TTC network. We have fabulous partners in New England. We have partnered with the C4 Innovations, the Harvard Department of Psychiatry, and the Center for Educational Improvement. And our mission is to really promote recovery-oriented practices around the area of New England. And we have been around for around 2.5 years. In addition to promoting recovery and evidence-based practices in mental health, we are also have a school mental health initiative and a wellness initiative that really is open to everybody in the region. In addition to our, we offer universal technical support. We offer also targeted webinars and more intense activities like the one we're going to be about to do with something we're calling REACH. So in the New England Mental Health TTC, and I go back to the words that Mary said at the beginning, we really believe that working together, better together, is really what we need to do. In addition to the principles of recovery, we are committed to addressing social justice, and we are developing an initiative called REACH, which is really where this complements the work of DIPS. And we are here to invite you to be part and be a partner with us, because I think some of the others speaking have been talking about the importance of partnering with each other. So we are going to be talking about racial equity and advancing cultural humility. And that's really what we want to do is a learning community in which we can partner for a year and really help you achieve this mission. So we're going to be sending a survey to all of you here today and many others, and we want to learn from you. We are here to provide, to meet your needs around training and technical assistance. We want to learn what will be helpful. We want you to feel supported by this initiative because we are committed to intentionally building relationships with everybody here, not only all of you here today, but really in your communities. We need to understand what works best for you so we can address the needs of mental health. We are going to be incorporating this feedback into our process, hoping to really then offer to you topics that are going to be of interest in helping your organization advance and around this mission. So we are delighted to be partnering with you. You can visit us here on our website for more additional information. I was very delighted to hear about the Native American, the Connecticut tribes as well. And we also are reaching out to all the New England tribes as well. So we are here for you. We invite you to partner, and we really believe that better together is how we can accomplish this mission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Maria, for saving us on time. Thank you so much. You were outstanding. Thank you. Ronald, you're up.
Hello, a pleasure to be here, honored to be here, and thankful to be part of this amazing showcase. I want to open up with a quick story. About 4 weeks ago, before Massachusetts shut down again for COVID spike, we were at our Hoop Dreams basketball character development program. One of the young men, Demarion, but everyone calls him Papa, had shots fired at his house. He left the gym, he went into the car with one of our outreach workers, and he was having a hard time. He wanted to go to the house, he wanted to handle the situation, he needed retribution. He called me outside, I sat in the car with our outreach worker, Janito and Papa, and he talked about what it meant to him if his mother was hit or his sister was hit. We talked through some things, and when I said to him, I said, listen, right now, if you were to respond, I think that you might make a bad decision. And you told me already that it was important to you, your mother and your sister. And I think that decision that you may make could impact that. This brother began to cry. And what he said to me still gives me the chicken skin. He said, why do you care so much? What is it that you see in me that makes you want to keep helping me? That is Legendary Legacies. Legendary Legacies is built off a proverb in the scriptures, 13:22, which says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. The work that we do here at Legendary Legacies is working with young men between 17 to 24 who have been impacted by the criminal justice system. We have a focus on making sure that 80% of our staff at least are people of color or have some sort of lived experience. We've heard some of my colleagues previously talk about how important it is. If you've lived it, you understand it. We know that we need that space. We know that specifically for our young men, they don't have a lot of those spaces. And so we get to do that. One of the other things that we focus on in our core values, one of our core values is relatability. We place a high value on learning, understanding, and being able to adapt to the cultures that we engage. When we work with our young brothers, we know that we engage them as their own culture. 17 to 24. As young as I think I still am, I'm not there anymore. And so we have to adapt our programming. Our legacy music program is a program in which we use cognitive behavioral therapy in a way that the young brothers get to write hip hop lyrics, write, record, and produce songs and express themselves in a culturally flexible way while doing the work of healing. Our Hoop Dreams program is one that combines basketball and character development. We had the unique opportunity when COVID-19 hit to be able to develop an innovative employment program with community partners. We titled that Be Legendary. This job training and employment program provided employment for our young brothers in partnership with food pantries and providing delivery services and resource delivery services to those community members most in need. One of the most powerful things that came from that was hearing these young brothers talk about, I feel like I'm changing the world. It was these young brothers that were in a situation where they had historically been looked at as liabilities to their community, where they were realizing and harnessing their power to be assets in their community. I'll yield most of my time here because I have a video I'd like to share where you can hear from one of our young brothers and what it was like for his experience of being part of that Be Legendary program.
My name's Tyreek Chambers. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Worcester, Massachusetts. I've been working with Legendary Legacies for about a year now. We help pass out food through the pandemic. We deliver canned goods from the food bank. We also go around and make deliveries to people in need that aren't available to make it out and get what they need to survive. Me personally, it stopped me from going to work. So right now, this is just about all I do. I feel like it's had a positive impact. It feels good to just come out and help people every week and, see a smile on their faces and just knowing that you can do something to help out. It's just it feels better. The nursing homes that we visit, where a lot of the older residents stay, their expression usually says a lot, and they usually say thank you. And they're a lot happier once they see us come with the food.
I apologize you couldn't see the visuals. I'll be sure to send that out so that I can go as a post showcase content for you guys. But the video is very powerful. But this is the work we're doing. Some of the obstacles, and I'll take 30 seconds if I may, that we continue to face is we were founded in 2018. We were a volunteer organization. In 2020, we are now 3 full-time employees working with 53 young men in our community. We continue to seek other funding sources to allow us to serve more young men. We've had to wait list and we've had to deny some services just because of the capacity and the depth of work that we know is needed in working with our young men. And with that, I'll complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. Okay, we want to give you a good shout out, and I want to thank everybody for being patient through that process is powerful. Send me the soundtrack. Okay, Nagi, you, AKA, which is easier for me to pronounce, Moon, you're up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My name is Nyamun Wang Mashar, and I come from the South Sudanese tribe. Moon, if you can't pronounce that, is totally fine. Right now, I am a youth advocate. I also just opened my own LLC where I am partnering with universities and community members to begin training and storytelling and using documentaries to be able to inform policy and really feel like the community's voices are being heard. I recently partnered with the New York Film Academy, and we kind of followed my journey with a young South Sudanese man who was transitioning out of the first episode psychosis program and really started to speak directly towards the struggles that he was having in finding a voice around the stigmatized conversations of mental health. My passion comes from my own experiences in being hospitalized and not finding a way to relate to a lot of my service providers. I live in Maine, being one of the whitest states. And so my biggest passion is to be able to storytell and to be able to authentically represent the voices in communities. But I think that where that begins to happen is not only staying in the communities, but inviting community members to come up to policymaking tables, to be able to partner and speak to universities and speak in the classes where a lot of tomorrow's leaders in the social work field are going to be. And so with that, I've been able to also partner with the University of New England by way of one of my mentors, Professor Arabea Perez, who has on numerous accounts made sure she carved out ways for me to come in and speak towards the understanding of what trauma-informed means when you are coming and with a lens of a from a war-torn country. Recently in Maine, I'm not sure if you've been watching the news, but we had over 700 asylum seekers move here in the past year and a half from Angola, brought up from the detention centers in Texas. And I've been consulting with a lot of the systems that have been struggling to actually embrace them in, even seeing that my daughter going into the school system and seeing that her classrooms have changed and a lot of the teachers are not giving additional training to be able to support this new classroom and what that looks like. Right now, I'm working with a professor out of Cornell where we went and with me and my director, where we went and presented a documentary where we were watching how my family, who moved here in 1995, my father being a child soldier, and how the systems were there and the growth that has happened or has not happened, and comparing it to a family of an asylum seeker here. We are also in this documentary watching my work in the community and mirror and wanting to be able to highlight the importance of representation and having Black mentorship. So when I listened, especially to Ronald and what you're doing and how important it is for a young Black man to have a Black mentor and to be able to have that representation and that example of how to build a healthy relationship with an adult, I think is so crucial to the well-being and the movement of progression in the conversation of mental health in Black communities. I know that here in Maine, we have now been in a state of emergency because of our opioid crisis, and I'm watching a rising number of drug overdoses happen within our own communities, the immigrant communities, and within it's just so alien to a lot of the cultures that are here. And so to be able to go in and engage the systems that are going to help this community has been very difficult because there's so many gaps within the bridges to those communities, whether it be through lingo, whether it be through the ways that they represent the help that they get, or whether it be through the stigma and the fear of what it means to admit that your young person is suffering from a drug addiction or has now been ensnared in the criminal justice system. My own brother was ensnared in the system and is now serving a 40-year sentence. And so I use these stories to be able to potently sit at tables and speak directly back to the often generalized understandings of how to help a community. I think when it comes to funding, often funding is given to white organizations, and then they are in charge of delineating how the funds are then distributed, and then how the deliverables are met. And I think it's really important, if I could give any word of advice, to start to bring on Black consultants to be able to guide the process of getting the funding into the hands of the community members on the ground, really doing the work day in and day out. And I also think when it comes to survey tools and how we collect information on a community, I even know that a lot of the surveys and the processes are not relevant right now to many of the growing and diversifying communities in Maine. So I'm constantly having to translate so many of the knowing what information this organization or the state is trying to collect, having to translate and make my community understand how they should answer so that their needs are very clearly understood. With me, I think peer support is a large component of that, but even peer support in itself within immigrant communities is something very alien. And so there's a lot of education that needs to happen. Before this, I was able to work with Disability Rights Maine and as a cultural strategist, and I was lucky enough to have a director there that listened to me when I spoke towards, helping members in my own immigrant communities be able to understand their rights around how they maneuver through systems, and being able to be an advocate and be able to take a lot of this information and be able to make it be able to help my community be able to consume it, but also clearly understand it. I think that the most important thing, being a storyteller myself, is to be able to authentically represent the stories in the community. And for me, it comes directly through documentary making, it comes through film, it comes through ways of directly going in and living in that community and speaking to the people who've experienced the oppressions or the helps and the harms, and taking it seriously. I also think making sure that it's equitable, and so that you are really giving the individuals who are doing the work the funding and the resources that they need in order to execute, and in order to be relevant and be able to see that potent change that they're intending to go forth. Yes, absolutely. So
thank you so much. I'm trying to, I want to go on, and I could spend the night with you on this, but we got to keep moving. So
no worries.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I am going to make sure I follow instructions here, and let's see if I can get this right. I want to thank you all for this, I want to call it speed dating almost round. It was very pleasurable. We learned a whole lot. I think it's been my pleasure to moderate. I want to be able to now transition back to Taylor, if I'm doing this correctly. Thank you so much.
Hi, we have the pleasure of welcoming Machisi Rankin. Thank you for hanging in there with us. He is going to close our program today with some very powerful remarks. Machisi, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ingrid. And thank you all the panelists who I feel like closing behind you guys is a more than daunting task. So I'll just begin. There are a lot of topics that are difficult to discuss. Things that we consider taboo, like sex and drugs. As a parent, I reflect on the myriad of uncomfortable conversations that I've had with my children. Death is always the worst. Chadwick Boseman's passing was a shocker and hit my kids and me pretty hard. As fans of the Marvel Disney films, we could not believe that the Black Panther, the King of Wakanda, had left us. We actually struggled with grief thinking about Boseman's portrayal of this African king, scientist, warrior, and superhero. That got me to thinking about the cultural significance of the Black Panther and the subtle way in which we subliminally teach our children to be culturally biased against themselves. There are so few images of strong Black men and women in the so-called mainstream media. Losing this iconic character was a terrible loss. How many of our families suffer through grief without proper care for their mental health? Since my children were very young, Halloween, like for many children, was a favorite event. My son Carter always dressed up as one of his favorite superheroes, and my daughter Talia as a favorite Disney princess. At the time, I didn't realize that I was helping to reinforce the stereotypical examples of beauty, grace, courage, and commitment were characters who, in fact, did not look like them. I was struggling with addiction at the time. I wasn't a bad father, at least I didn't think I was, but I damn sure wasn't living like a noble leader of a family. I own that. Carter was everyone from Captain America to Superman, and Talia was all the Disney princesses and Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, ruby slippers and all. Talia is a real gem, a true star. She has this beautifully luxurious natural hair. When she was in kindergarten, a list of superlatives was written about the children in her class by their classmates. All of the boys, which is an ethnically diverse group, wrote about how intelligent, funny, and strong she was. The girls, who were mostly white, spoke about her hair first. Every single one of them mentioned her hair first, then how smart, funny, etc. she was. That stuck out to me and their mom. What was so silly, crazy, or funny about her hair? They noticed it, but perhaps weren't conditioned to see it as beautiful. How can instances like these affect a young Black girl or boy, and do they internalize some level of self-loathing as a result? I juxtapose that situation to a different one, to an event where so many young Black women walked up to Talia and told her how beautiful her natural hair is. Talia beamed, and I thanked all the young ladies because it was just a great act of solidarity. All these beautiful ebony women greeted each other as sisters and then welcomed my little girl into that sisterhood. She was rolling with the big girls. In the blink of an eye, she has become one of those big girls, and my son, a young man. With these transitions, the time has come for some of the inevitable and unavoidable conversations that one must have with their children. As a descendant of slaves, I need to have extra conversations with my children. I not only have to cover the basics, dating violence, sex, STDs, drugs, I also have to speak to them about being careful how they handle encounters with the police, how they are perceived by white culture, and manage their public face in the age of social media. That's tough, right? It's tough trying to tell your kids that no matter how good they are, no matter how much they go to school, do the right thing, and obey the law, they will always be targeted as the other, the suspect, or the suspicious one. How much pressure is that for a young person to bear? Now imagine being a kid who's living with food and financial insecurity, and government services threatening your caregiver with removing you from your home. That's got to be traumatic. Not just to those of us who've grown up in so-called normal circumstances. The added poverty and insecurities would significantly increase the already heavy weight on your shoulders. But for some, those factors are just background noise. For those young men and women, that's just Monday in the hood. Crime, drugs, violence, and poverty are norms of existence. The cumulative impact of generational trauma and self-medicating have created an atmosphere of hopelessness that has become accepted as part of life. Terms such as, quote unquote, don't be a bitch, quote unquote, I ain't no punk, quote unquote, I ain't scared of shit. These are some of the statements meant to bolster courage, to fortify one in the face of adversity, in an invalidating environment where it's not safe to express one's true feelings. They're rarely spoken as a point of fact because fear is at the root of these declarations. But we can't be afraid because too much is at stake. We are losing our young people. We have layers of lost souls wandering our communities for these young people to look at, and that becomes part of a collective hopelessness. This is an atmosphere of despair, and the desperate need for hope could not be greater. Structural institutional racism, swirled with restricted access to education, affordable housing, quality healthcare, and COVID-19 are killing us. Malcolm X said, I have no mercy or compassion in me for a society that will crush people and then penalize them for not being able to stand up under the weight. This brings me back to my children. See, in my early recovery, I had lost my workers' compensation benefits. I was a correctional officer who had to retire early due to an injury. Because of clerical errors, red tape, and the ineptness of the agent handling my claim, I was without income for almost a year. We struggled, and I sold things and had to borrow money from family and friends. We lived like that for just under a year. I was lucky because I had recovery capital. I had insurance, I had a stable home, yet close to a singular year almost broke me. My kids were the only thing that fortified me to fight on. They are the source of my power. I knew that returning to my old coping mechanisms was not an option. I couldn't and wouldn't go back to drinking. How could I? All kinds of craziness went through my head. I could have easily relapsed, but I had already metaphorically died. My addiction was like dying. The Black Panther, T'Challa, had died during the movie also. He was resurrected, partly because of the love of his family. I too was reborn because of support and love. I had to break down and admit that I needed that support. I had grown up hearing that only weak people ask for help in matters like this. What message was I sending to my kids? How the hell could I be a strong man when I couldn't handle being sober? Could I let them follow in my wake and let them believe that asking for support was the act of the weak? No. I had to correct what they had witnessed during the early years of their lives. I had to ask for aid. I don't know about other folks, but early recovery seemed easy until it got hard. How many of our brothers and sisters are trying to navigate those waters right now? How many lives and families could we save with some changes in how we as a culture view mental health? After several months, I was talking to a therapist. I knew him from my days as a correctional officer, and it helped me. For my brothers and sisters who are suffering, let me tell you, it helps to talk to someone about what's hurting your soul. Since those early days of my recovery, much has changed in my family life. Their mom and I were divorced. Carter has graduated from elementary school, and my little Talia continues to transform into a young woman, 10 going on 26. In these transitions, one thing has been front and center. We talk about what bothers us, and we seek help when the weight becomes overwhelming. My alcoholism was not much of a secret to my kids. My treatment and recovery couldn't be either. It was an uncomfortable conversation, but one that needed to be had. We have to have this conversation with our brothers and sisters, with the understanding that some of them might not be ready to receive this love, this support, this capital. Through education and modeling behavior, we can reduce harm and help to lead our brothers and sisters out of the darkness of addiction or the pain of mental health struggles and into the light of recovery and treatment. With love and patience, we can create a string of Wakandas throughout our collective communities. Let's light a fire and burn the way home for our lost tribe folk. For those of us in recovery and our allies, I'll leave you with these words from Malcolm X. Don't be in a hurry to condemn because he doesn't do what you do or think as you think or as fast. There was a time when you didn't know what you know today. Ladies and gentlemen, I, Machisti Rankin, am a proud father, advocate, and Black man in long-term recovery. I faced my demons. I fought them, and I won. Thank you.
Machisti Rankin, everyone. I want to leave you with his words in the amazing showcase speaker's presentation. Thank you for joining us today and tomorrow, where you will get more powerful words. If you can think of anyone who might like to join us tomorrow and wasn't able to join today, we will reopen the registration again, and so that they can join us. Take great care, and we'll see you tomorrow. I'll be short, we're over time. Thank you so much.